Hello, today a problem by Alfreds Dombrovskis, a problem that was very important in its time and is still very important to know. It changed completely the way the problems were looked at the things that are worth doing, and it's made in 2 moves, and you are invited to solve it. It is very interesting to solve also. We'll see the content, and if you solved it first, it will be more interesting for you to follow the explanations. I begin immediately. If you want to solve, you stop the video a while, and then we go on. The position of the black king is completely closed. The rook on e4 is controlling c4 and d4 and e3 and e2, and mainly the rook is alone controlling c4 and e2. The d4 square is also controlled by the king and by the knight, and the e3 square is also controlled by the bishop and by the knight. The bishop h6 controls d2, the queen a4 controls c2, and the pawn c3 blocks the square, and so the jail of the king is completely closed. The knight h5 has a check on f4, and the knight on c2 seems to be active to give checks. On e1 it seems very well controlled by black, and on b4 it is blocked by the white pawn. So let's have a look at the simple tries we can find, and the first one we'll have a look at is knight g3. Knight g3 controls e2 and then threatens rook d4, and the square on d4 is not easily controlled by black, and black also have no flight to give to its king. So the only defense that is enough is queen e2. Queen e2 pins the rook on e4, and then it defends against rook d4. Another try is bishop c1. Bishop c1 is crossing the square f4, and so threatens knight to f4 mate. And again, there are no many ways to control this. The only move that is a defense is bishop d2, and bishop d2 controls well the square, and it's a refutation. You have no white continuation after this. You can still try to solve, and I'm going now to give the solution. So the key is knight e3. Knight e3 is leaving the square c2 and threatens queen c2 and gives 2 flights because it is closing the 2 lines of the rook and of the bishop. But the flights are not very useful for black immediately. For example, if king goes to e2, queen d1 is mate. So the ways black can forbid this mate in c2, you have 2 moves. Queen e2, that is controlling c2 directly, but queen e2 is blocking the e2 square, and now you have rook d4, because on the key we occupied e3, and then the queen is no more pinning the rook on e4. Another defense is bishop d2, that is closing the line c2 e2, and then is a defense against the threat on c2. But the move e1 d2 is blocking the flight on d2, and then you have knight f4, because on the key we closed the line d2 f4, and then the bishop is no more controlling the square f4. This is all. You have two defenses. And so what is the content? Why is it such a strange thing? The new thing that is showed here is that the same black move once are forbidding a white threat, and once is provoking this mate. For example, I come back to what I said. Knight g3 threatens rook d4, and queen e2 is forbidding this mate. But after the key, queen e2 provokes rook d4. So the same move once is forbidding the mate, and once is provoking the mate. On the other hand, you have the same thing. Bishop c1 threatens f4, and bishop d2 is defending. And after the key, bishop d2 provokes knight f4, that by the way is controlling back the second flight e2, and the same way that after queen e2 the rook is controlling back the flight on d2. So that's all, and it was in its time a shock, because people were not used to consider the tries and the paradoxical relationship that might be shown between the black moves and the white moves. I hope you like this problem. It's an important one to know, and bye. Thank you.